now for the Shop Report with
Barbershop Jay.
What up, sports fans? Welcome to the Shop Report. I'm Barbershop Jay. I'll be your host for the day. Here's what's happening. Well. I mean, my goodness, the NBA Finals is not even 10 minutes old, and already the NBA's drama is at an all-time high. Right before the draft, mind you. Where's Paul George going? Do the Cavs want Jimmy Butler? Does Jimmy Butler want the Cavs? Does Paul George want the Cavs? Magic Man in L.A. land. What is he saying? But first up, we're going to talk about Dan Gilbert in this fiasco of letting GM David Griffin walk. Now, how is it that a guy, a billionaire owner, can get over $80 million, which started out as $140 million, and it still may end up being $140 million, from taxpayers in the city of Cleveland for renovations to his building, the Q, got casinos and just about everything that you can ask for in downtown Cleveland and Detroit. $28 million, $29 million over the luxury tax in the NBA. Pay for everything else. LeBron, Kevin Love, Kyrie, but he can't find the monies to give to a guy who orchestrated the Cavs being in the last 3 NBA Finals, winning once after 52 years of misery in the city. And you don't get this guy a new contract? Man, what's up with that, man? That's some bull. Now, it's also been some rumors, and I say where there's fire, there's smoke. Or better yet, as my man Herman Arvey, former Cleveland Brown, Baltimore Raven Herman Arvey, would like to say, if it walk like a duck, quack like a duck, then doggone it, it ain't a skunk. Some people are saying, after LeBron's homage to David Griffin, man, Griff, I appreciate everything you did for us. Man, if don't nobody else appreciate it, I do. Some people are saying that it's orchestrated, or as I like to say, maybe even calculated. So is Dan Gilbert having delusions of grandeur? Or is it that he's a first-time, as I like to say, first-time victim, and any time after that a volunteer? Because on the one hand, if he's delusional, you don't let David Griffin walk. Who else you going to find out there to orchestrate this Cavs team in order for it to compete against the Golden States and the Kevin Durant's of the world? So now that David Griffin is out, is LeBron next? Some say yes, he's out. But what I can't understand, what I can't fathom is, how is it that not only do you let a guy out or let a guy walk who's at the helm of your success, that somehow, some way, sitting over in the corner, it ain't LeBron's fault. But then again, Dan Gilbert behind the scenes could have had a conversation with LeBron, and he said, you know what? You only got 1 year left. You're not going to get me like you got me before. So in other words, you're already up out of here, and I can smell it. I can see it. Foreshadowing, foresight. So let me go ahead and X this thing out and start all over from the beginning. I don't know. Somebody going to have to tell me, because this came totally out the blue for me. Unexpected. But I'll say this. It's trouble in Clavland. Do you understand what I'm saying? Look like folk might have to just replay over and over and over and over again them 2016 champions, because this makes absolutely no sense to me for David Griffin to be or have been put up out of here and no money's being paid to this dude. Then there are some that will say David Griffin didn't really do too much of nothing. I guess. But on paper, he did a whole HE to the hockey sticks a lot. He got LeBron to come back home, signed Kyrie to a major deal. And speaking of Kyrie, there's some rumblings about him maybe asking for a trade if LeBron were to leave. Man, I'm telling you, it's messed up in Cleveland. Got Kevin Love here, Dan Gilbert did. Shump, Corver, James Jones. I mean, this is just about anything LeBron asked for, David Griffin did. And from my understanding, this whole tumultuous situation came about, or the nucleus of this whole thing is that they wouldn't put Kyrie on the table. Gilbert is saying that Kyrie could be on the table, allegedly, in terms of, or in regards to some sort of trade for Paul George or Jimmy Butler. And Griffin allegedly said, no. Well, guess what? I'm on Griff's side on this one. Because make no mistake about it, how soon we forget. LeBron may get all the headlines and all the pub, but it was Kyrie who came up with the big dub in 2016, if you know what I mean. So stay tuned. We'll see how this story unfolds. On another front, Danny Ainge, president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics, engineered what many are saying is unprecedented. Oh my gosh, how could he do this? Well, I'm saying this is a smart move on the part of Danny Ainge by swapping picks with the Sixers. That's right. The Boston Celtics went from having the number 1 pick to the number 3 pick, and from the Sixers, they get a pick in 2018. Now, you all can look this up because it was just too lengthy and too detailed for me to sit here and spell it all out for you. I don't have that kind of time. But you go back and look up all of the picks that the Boston Celtics have, including this year's draft all the way out to 2019, and you'll see that Danny Ainge is trying to put something together that I am so totally for. He's trying to make the Celtics not only relevant for today, but tomorrow as well. So I say Ainge's move was brilliant. And brilliant more so because of something former Tampa Bay Bucks head coach and Indianapolis Colts head coach Tony Dungy said in his book, and I can't think of the title or the name of this book. Forgive me. The senility really is, it's been kicked in big time. But Tony Dungy once said, any pick can be a hit or miss, but do you have the front office folk in place who understand how to minimize that risk? And I believe Ainge has his eyes set on not the Josh Jackson from Kansas or the Markelle Fultz, but instead, and there's been some conversation about this as well, Duke's Jason Tatum, I think, is the best fit for the Celtics. Now, yes, Josh Jackson is a spark plug. Markelle Fultz, a volume shooter. But if you go back and look at Washington and him in Washington's games, that's about all he did. It was a volume shooter. Ainge said, we need to, as should the Cavs have done, be able to play, or the Cavs should have done against the Warriors this past finals. Let me finish that off. We need to play from the post to the perimeter, not the other way around. So, in essence, I think Ainge is saying in this case, I'm going for who's the most polished over who has the most prestige, pedigree, or potential. Because let's face it, while all of these top heralded picks coming out in this year's draft, again, which is coming up this Thursday, tomorrow, all of these picks are talented as advertised. But at the end of the day, if the Boston Celtics and them getting the number 1 seed in this past season's playoffs was not a fluke, and we are to maintain that, we have to go about the business in the style of play. You all have heard me mention that before, the style of play. You cannot win an NBA title on perimeter play alone. You all have heard me mention the three ball and my disdain for it. And again, they need to move the three-point line back. I don't know what it was before and what it is now, but I know it's closer than what it was. And for all of these big-time athletes and these freaks of nature and all of that, you don't need to make it more challenging for them. But Ainge understands, because he played with Larry Bird and them Celtics teams in the 80s, the mid-80s anyway. He understands the nuances and the attention to detail, and not about iso ball, one-on-one. Iso ball is cool if your strategy is, if you're setting it up for such in certain situations. But for that to be your bread and butter, which that, of course, is what doomed the Cavs, not because they didn't score enough or because the Warriors had Durant. It's how the Cavs chose to play late in games down the stretch. Danny Ainge is on to something. Whether y'all want to admit it or not, he is on to something. He's trying to build a dynasty, in theory, on paper. And if he drafts Jason Tatum, again, as I believe he will, it will solidify the Celtics down in and around that post area. And when I say playing from the post to the perimeter, let me be clear. I'm not saying that you always have to, quote unquote, post up. Sometimes you run a guy through there and bring him out the other side. I don't know. Find ways. But just like in football, the paint area in basketball is like the trenches. The offensive line, defensive line, you got to go in and you got to get in the trenches. When you start in the trenches, it opens everything else up out on the perimeter. You cannot be perimeter oriented and think that now in the today BA, you can get away with that in the regular season. It'll win you 50 games. But it makes your title chances and you going about it that way, lame. So I say take Mr. Tatum from Duke. And I'm not a fan of Duke, never have been. Razorback fan, 1994, Corliss Williamson, Corey Beck. You all remember. And if you don't, Google it. I'm not a fan of Duke for a whole lot of reasons, but I won't get into all of that right now. It's not enough time. But in this instance, Tatum, I believe, is the most polished player in this year's draft. Period. Hands down. And speaking of this year's draft, let me give you a rundown on some of my draft notables, or as I like to say, 2017 NBA draft notables. Now, of course, we got your obvious. Your Markelle Fultz, point guard from Washington. Alonzo Ball, the point guard from UCLA. De'Aaron Fox, point guard Kentucky. Jason Tatum, as I just mentioned, small forward from Duke. Josh Jackson, small forward from Kansas. Lauri Markkanen, and he is critical in all of this, and I'll dive into that a little bit more in regards to Phil Jackson in the New York Knicks situation. Malik Monk, the point guard from Kentucky. Dennis Smith Jr., one of my favorites, who's not getting enough pub heading into the draft or leading up to this year's draft, which I don't like at all. It seems like the media, the national media, picks a few guys that they want to talk about. And I'm not saying these guys don't deserve conversation or shouldn't be a topic of conversation. The Markelle Fultz, the Lonzo Balls, the Fox, the Tatums, Josh Jackson, and so on and so forth. But they don't give enough shine to at least the top 10 or enough conversation to the top 10 or maybe even the top 25 cats coming out into this year's draft. Zach Collins, the center from Gonzaga. Luke Kennard, who's another interesting player from Duke. The shooting guard. Caleb Swanigan, power forward from Purdue. Josh Hart, who is a senior from Villanova. and Nigel Hayes, who also is a senior power forward from Wisconsin. And let me say Josh Hart is a shooting guard from Villanova. Now, let me give you my breakdown of each player. Now, I didn't go through the top 100 prospects because a lot of them guys I didn't see. But these are the guys, my 13, I did happen to see. I got more than a large enough sample size, okay, watching these cats play. Markelle Fultz is a dynamo in college, okay? But he's also, like I said, a volume shooter. Will it translate to the next level? Well, you got to be able to shoot. I mean, no question. That's what the Today BA has become, shooting primarily. But I don't think that his intangibles stand out enough. So in other words, if his shot is not on that day, I don't see where he brings the other stuff to the table as a Dennis Smith Jr. Lonzo Ball. Jay Billis once said about this guy, now even though his shot is ugly, it is oogly. Jay Billis said he's the one guy in college who can dominate and control the game without dominating the ball. Now, that's saying something. That definitely would translate to the next level. That shot, I'm not so sure. But we'll see. Can he create the space necessary to be able to get that ugly shot off? But then again, I mean, you know, we've seen it in the NBA before. You know, Rick Barry used to shoot free throws underhanded. So, I mean, don't count it out. De'Aaron Fox, point guard from Kentucky. Yes, the pedigree is there. The blue blood, playing for Kentucky. But his jump shot is terrible. Now, how you even got to the collegiate level, let alone the NBA level, Rajon Rondo, without a jump shot is beyond me. There are essentials in the game of basketball that you must have in order to be successful consistently. And a jump shot is one of them. Being able to create the jump shot or stand still, but either way, a jump shot is one of them. And knowing when to shoot it selectively, understanding is another one. And footwork. You don't have to be a post player to have good footwork. You should. But a guard, small forwards, power forwards, they got to have good footwork too. Or understanding of how to use the footwork, along, of course, with having the good footwork. So I'm not so sure where Fox would go, where he would fall, and so on and so forth. But he played at Kentucky. Jason Tatum, I said, the most complete player coming out in this year's draft. As a small forward, he can shoot. He can play with his back to the basket. Now, you have to have, well, again, this is all in college now. Let me keep saying that, because sometimes that next level, that NBA level, you know, and which is why I said a little while ago, any pick can be a hit or miss. This is all potential, but, well, not all potential. This is all, how could I say, based on. Because you just never know when a guy goes to that next level. Because this is the NBA. As much as I can't stand how it's played, it still is the NBA. Like they say, when a guy goes from college football to the NFL, you know, an offensive player, for instance, may look good against a defense because on the other side, it's only two players who are NFL talents. He's going up against a defense with only two guys. With the NFL, all 11 guys are in the NFL for a reason. So based on that premise. But Jason Tatum, man, he just brings a lot to the table. Which is why I think, and again, Danny Ainge, when he made this move, you know, this swap or whatever the case may be, people are talking as if though, you know, him having the third, he still got one of the top 5 picks, right, in this draft. So he didn't, I mean, you know, that's not a bad thing. You know, there's such a misnomer, this whole, well, he was the number 1 pick. It's not about where you were picked at. It's about your production. on both ends of the floor and maintaining that production? And can you play at a high level? I think Tatum will be able to do that. Now, Josh Jackson, we all saw what he did at Kansas. Some say, man, he reminds me of Andrew Wiggins. Well, I don't like that. He's this guy. He looks like that guy. Let him be Josh Jackson. And he is a spark plug, no doubt about it. When he get going, he get gone. It's hard to stop that boy. But I say, what's the one thing that he does well? That no matter what it is, night in and night out, if he don't do nothing else, he's going to do that one thing. It's hard to say. But I will say this again. He's going to give you energy and effort. And we've seen at the NBA level, cats ain't even doing that. Okay? Now, this Lauri Markkanen, if I'm saying that right, he's interesting, the power forward from Arizona. He's interesting because Phil Jackson, Knicks, whatever he is, president, I don't know, CEO, I don't know what they call him, But Phil Jackson as a front office person, when he first got the job in New York, I told a colleague of mine, I said, look, man, his presence alone is going to be infectious and help to make the Knicks better. Boy, was I wrong. Whatever he was as a head coach, he is the exact opposite as a front office exec. He is terrible. Is he trying to get fired? I don't know. Don't care. But he is terrible, Phil Jackson is. Trying to trade Kristaps Porzingis for Lauri Markkanen? Why? Unless he's just trying to put fillers out there. And don't get it twisted. I believe even in the Today BA, the triangle will work. It will work. But yes, you got to have the right pieces. Yes, you got to have the right coach and all that good stuff and all of that. But I think it will work. It's not a dinosaur. Because on the flip side, you look at Greg Popovich and everybody lauds and applauds Greg Popovich's system. But if you look at Pop's system, it's simple. It's basketball. Pass, cut, spacing, all those nuances or details, as I mentioned earlier. Pop just heightens or highlights, the details and the nuances of the game, which allows the Spurs to be who they are for the most part. And don't get it twisted. Them getting knocked out in the first round by Golden State, that is, I can't even find a word for it right now. No. Don't think that that's the Spurs. It's not. Okay? We all know when Kawhi Leonard went down what the deal was. Okay? He was the head or the driver of the race car, if you would. You get what I'm saying? Gasol and Aldridge and all the other cats, they were the engines and the tires and the tire rods and so on and so forth, but Kawhi was the driver. Okay? Hard to get a race car around a racetrack without a driver. I don't understand Phil. I just don't. Makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Malik Monk, like Markelle Fultz, he's talented. Like I said at the beginning of this, most of these guys are talented, but talent don't equal skill. How many times have I said that? I couldn't even tell you what Malik Monk will be at the next level because his jump shot is weak too. Then comes my man Dennis Smith Jr., who I believe is the most polished point guard in this year's draft. Yeah, as they like to say, he's a bit undersized, but I'm not trying to hear that either because Isaiah Thomas ain't 6'5". Neither was Spud Webb. Neither was Muggsy Bogues. Neither was Terrell Brandon. Neither was, what's my boy name? Oh, I can't even think of his name right now. Came right here from Cleveland. Earl Boykins, So I don't, Robert Pack, Tiny Nate Archibald. These guys played at the highest level too, man. So I don't want to hear about that undersized and so on and so forth. But I think he's not getting his just due as the other. Because is he a top 5 pick? Depends on what you are, what you're looking for, what you already got, so on and so forth, and which team, so on and so forth. But if he were picked ahead of Monk and Fox, well, and maybe even Fultz, I don't see a problem with it. Then you got Zach Collins, the center from Gonzaga. He would do well for a team who plays basketball from a fundamental standpoint, like a Spurs, or which kind of seems to be they seem to be on the cusp of the Milwaukee Bucks or the Memphis Grizzlies. Don't get it twisted. This style of play and having these types of players, it will work. I know they're trying to phase out centers and so on and so forth. But who would you rather have? A guy with the ability to play like a Marc Gasol or DeAndre Jordan, who, by the way, the Clippers are taking trade offers for, so to speak, or at least in conversation with folk. Then you got Luke Kennard, shooting guard from Duke. Don't underestimate this guy, because I'm telling you right now, he is no Grayson Allen. By far, Duke's best player. By far, in terms of Grayson Allens of the world. Or let me be specific or clarify. The Duke's best shooter. Then we rounded out with Caleb Swanigan, power forward from Purdue. Still needs to add a little bit more definitiveness to his game, but you cannot deny that the nuts and bolts are there. What he needs is to go to the kind of team, aforementioned the Bucks, the Grizzlies, the Spurs, that kind of team where somebody can show him how and where to put those nuts and bolts at, how to put them together to build whatever it is you're going to build. But his foundation is there. Then you got Josh Hart from the shooting guard from Villanova, and then Nigel Hayes, the power forward from Wisconsin. First and foremost, I like these dudes because they are seniors. Now, how many cats can you say about that nowadays? So that alone gives them a polish that some of the other guys I mentioned or aforementioned don't have. And then we all know what Josh Hart brought to the table for Villanova when they knocked off the fantabulous Buddy Hield in Oklahoma, and how Villanova extended their defense with Hart, leading the charge. And then Nigel Hayes has been getting a lot of bad press for some of the things that he's come out and said. But as a player, dude is a very, very intelligent player, a workhorse, who I don't know if he might be able to be somebody's sixth man or whatever the case may be. But I guarantee you, once he figures out the next level and the pace of the game and how to play, he will be not only on somebody's roster for the long haul, but he'll get minutes. No doubt about it, he'll get minutes. So I look forward to this upcoming NBA draft just to see not only where players are going to go, but who they're going to go to. Because we all got an idea. This guy should go here, this guy should go there. But again, don't get caught up in the popularity of the guys that ESPN is talking about only, or seems to be the case. Do your research, do your homework. Go back and look at more than highlights of some of the guys I just mentioned here. The ones I emphasized. The Jason Tatum, the Josh Hart, the Nigel Hayes. And you'll see that these are the types of cats that really can take a franchise, theoretically, not only maybe to the next level, but keep them in the conversation for years to come. And I'm going to finish things off with my man, Jerry West, who, it seems like all of a sudden, overnight, left the Golden State Warriors to go to the LA Clippers. His going to the Clippers could be bad for Magic and the Lakers, because Jerry West, the logo, not only played for the Lakers, but coached the Lakers to how many NBA championships in the 80s? 5. So let me say this. Let me read this to you. This is about, of course, Jerry West. The Lakers' legendary owner, Jack Kent Cooke, look him up, he was known for having a keen eye, identifying leadership and teaching qualities. Who, by the way, also gave Hall of Famer Sparky Anderson, the Detroit Tigers manager, and Joe Gibbs, the Washington Redskins, the Washington National Football League team, their first starts in coaching, if you would. And asked West, Jack Kent did, and asked West to coach and participate in the player personnel decisions for the Lakers. I think it was 1976. In his first 3 seasons, the Lakers not only made the playoffs, but they made the Western Conference Finals in 1977. Imagine that. As a general manager, West engineered a Lakers dynasty. And by now, you all should have seen that 30 for 30. Engineered a Lakers dynasty that brought 5 championships to the Lakers. 1980, 1982, 1985, 1987, and 1988 with Magic and Kareem. Then in the early 2000s, orchestrated the Kobe, Shaq, and Phil triumvirate, winning 3 more titles from between 2000 and 2002. After leaving the Lakers, he had a layover, if you would, in Memphis, and brought Memphis to that respectability level where Lionel Hollins built the Grindhouse with Zebo, Conley, and Gasol. And for whatever reason, I still don't understand why they couldn't find a small forward, a shooting guard to go along with, them guys, and they could have, made a little bit more noise. But let's don't get it twisted now. The Grizzlies are a tough out. So after a brief stint with the Grizzlies, on May 19th, 2011, Jerry West joined the Golden State Warriors as an executive board member, which, of course, we all know saw the Warriors play in 3 NBA finals, all against the Cleveland Cavaliers, mind you, winning, of course, in 2015, losing to the Cavs in 2016, and in 2017, once again, beating the Cavs. All told, earning West 8 rings. 8 rings as an NBA executive. Count that. How many fingers you got? And yes, thumbs are fingers, but 8 rings? The point is, wherever Jerry goes, good things are bound to happen, which makes him joining the Clippers and not the Lakers not only jaw-dropping, but can't wait to see all at the same time. And on that note, it's been fun, but I got to run. Appreciate y'all for listening to the Shop Report. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Or email us, theshopreport365@gmail.com. And if that don't work, Google it. And remember, the next time y'all want to know what's really going on, man, come to the shop. Walk-ins are always welcome. Holla.